Oh my goodness. Hello everyone. Oh my god, okay, I gotta get the day right. It's April 12th, 2010. And as you can see, I got a new webcam and the quality should be like really, really good. Let me just go ahead and clear the chat here with my magic zap button. Bam! Today we're gonna let me just write it today. We're going to be taking a look at some Terran versus Terran. Because we haven't gotten really a chance to examine that particularly in depth. So I'm going to be opening up StarCraft 2 here, and I mean, this is so cool. Okay, so I recently put up my donation information, like my PayPal account, because I noted that I wanted to get a new setup. There's been some issues streaming in high enough quality, and of course, the viewer experience is always my primary concern. So I wanted to make sure that that was like fine and dandy and all was well and good. But I hit an issue, and that I'm broke, right? So when I put the donation up, everyone was just like, whoa, yeah, totally, like throwing money at me, which is crazy. And at first when I actually got money from people, I was like, oh my god, I hope I didn't scam anybody. Like, I had no idea that you guys were so nice. I want you to know the first thing I did is I got this HD web camera. I also bought a whole bunch of fancy schmancy equipment, so that way I can actually stream in much higher quality as opposed to just my face being higher quality. But yeah, once we get this new thing set up, this beta replay, I will switch right on over to the main screen. So yeah, you can see a little bit more of my room. You see I have a closet over there. That's where I put clothes on. There's my Diablo 3 poster and my StarCraft 2 poster to my right. And there's a door behind me where I enter and exit the room because I do not climb through the ceiling. So now that I actually do have this open, once again, sorry for like the 3-minute delay. It's actually because I did the dumb thing and got here at like 9:45. And I normally go live at like 9:50. So I started installing the webcam software like immediately, which of course didn't end up working out so well. I always got to do the tech stuff after a cast, not like 5 seconds beforehand. But of course, before I can even mention anything at all, there's a pretty significant issue that needs to be discussed, which is the big pro gaming scandal. For any of you who are unfamiliar with this, go check teamliquid.net about this. But basically, some of the most famous StarCraft players of all time have been throwing their matches, and there's been extraordinary amounts of match rigging where even players as good as Savior, who's actually one of the most guilty parties. Sorry, let me move my mic a little bit closer. Yeah, Savior apparently been throwing his matches for an incredibly long time. There were these ring sites where a lot of illegal gambling would happen on StarCraft matches. And the thing is, if it's Savior versus someone really awful, to make it so that people are going to bet on both sides, they have to set a good line, right? They have to say like 1 to 3 odds. You know, if you bet on Savior, you have to bet $3 in order to win 1 and that sort of thing. Well, what they were doing is setting the line at like 1 to 1, where it's Savior against someone awful. And then what they would do is know that everyone who registered would obviously bet on Savior, because why would you bet on the crappy guy when you're not even getting good odds? And then they would go to Savior and pay him like $10,000 to throw the match, because that way they would win everyone's money. And Savior was even betting against, I shouldn't keep using like Savior because I don't know specifically what he did. He's just one of the guilty parties. But I mean, players were doing things like betting against themselves on multiple sites in order to make a ton of money. And there's even just really gross stuff like replays being leaked by coaches for money in order to like have opposing teams devise winning strategies and all that stuff. So that just deeply bothers me a lot. I mean, I'm not going to lie, for any of you who may not have guessed, StarCraft is a big part of my life, right? Just playing and being part of the community and following these players. I mean, I would stay up late to watch players like Savior and Calm and Luxury, these amazing Zerg players, play really, really well. And then to find out that they've been throwing matches just for money, it feels like I feel betrayed, man. I like was really into these players. They're just fucking money-grubbing assholes. Pardon my language. But still, yeah, so, I mean, I am disgusted that anything like that can happen. So that's why I'm very eager for StarCraft 2 to come out, for that esports scene to come about, because I just want it to get away from Korea, which has also had problems in the past. This isn't the first time this has happened. I think the most famous one is where NBC in one of their tournaments created a rigged map so that one of the race's units attacked slightly faster and their buildings and all their units built a little bit more quickly, so you couldn't quite tell. It just felt wrong. And of course the player who lost was like, this is BS. I mean, there's no way I should have lost so badly. And then he like hacked the map and found out that in fact, yeah, it was a rigged map. So, you know, bugs me, but ugh. Either way, let's return back to the positive, happy things. Thank you so much for your donations, big hearts. Got my new fancy webcam, as you can see. Day 9 Daily number 100 is happening tomorrow, where I'll just tell my life of StarCraft, pretty much here, just talking directly at my computer. So please post on teamliquid.net. I have some threads on there about bumping that one up. So yeah, let's just go to the main screen and check out a Terran versus Terran. Now, Terran versus Terran has had a lot of interesting developments as of late. I'm just going to go ahead and start this right up right now. Yeah, it's a Jinro game, but he gives me a steady stream of very strong players' games, so don't mind me. So first of all, ignore the chat. They're just being friendly because everyone in Europe is friendly. A lot of players have been doing things like building a barracks, just walling in, something like this, occasionally not, and then they straight expand to their natural. And then afterwards, after they've done that, again, they're not gassing, they don't take either of these two geysers. After they've done that one barracks expand, they then add on 2 more barracks, but before they've added on any gas whatsoever, they just go for 3 barracks right after they get the expansion, and they just go mass Marine Marauder. Now, it used to be the case, actually I should pause and say this, it used to be the case, God, isn't this webcam quality amazing? It used to be the case that players would go mass Marauder, they would go mass Marine and get like reactors and then throw tons of SCVs into the battle. But after the patch, where they dropped SCV life from 60 to 45, they players have been doing a little bit more Marauder stuff, a little bit more Marine, as a later transition, not something that they necessarily get early, and just huge mass Marauder armies, eventually getting a lot of Marines in that mix, and getting complete and total map control, and it's very difficult for a lot of players to deal with that. So players such as myself and Jinro, and have had some, I know Greetorp has been thinking a lot about how to deviate from this pattern of just going mass Marine, and what those games would be like, away from mass infantry. So in this game, Jinro and Naruto are going to be going for something quite drastically different. And in case this betrays anything, we're going to see a bunch of Thors this game. And maybe if we have time, this is a relatively long game, kind of a cool game. If we have a chance, we'll get the opportunity to see a build that I've been trying out a little bit, but both players double gassing quite early on. And, you know, if this game, you know, I probably will end up reviewing the game that I played just because it's a good opportunity to see why Marine Marauder is so powerful. So, usual sort of thing, going for the early orbital command. Why not getting a second gas early on? Because generally it's better to try to build up your money, because notice right now, Jinro can afford to build a factory. He can now afford to build a depot. He's actually a little bit late on that depot. Assuming that Jinro did build a depot, he'd be at about 150, 100, which means he would be able to build a factory right away somewhere here. If you get the second gas too early, as actually Naruto did, part of the reason why this replay was selected, you already have enough gas for the factory, but look, you don't quite have enough money to make use of it. So already, if we're thinking about a mech strategy, we don't want to be getting our refinery too early on. And obviously both players doing the smart thing, wandering around each other's bases, trying to find as much stuff as possible. And always, pretty much, if you make 1 or 2 Marines to try to kill these SCVs, that's pretty fine and normal. That is the sort of thing where you'd want to do that to sort of hide your tech, because you don't want to reveal too much, and honestly, like 1 barracks straight into refinery and then an orbital command is the most normal thing in the universe. I mean, everything flows into that. So we have a very early tech lab, again, to help get our factory up. Now, I will stop a little bit and say right now, one of the things that I've been doing is getting a barracks with a reactor relatively early on, and then following it up with a factory with a tech lab relatively early on. And I basically push with tanks and Marines quite early, and that demolishes most infantry openings quite effectively. But we're going to see Jinro is instead just getting a tank, playing very defensively. Is he getting siege mode yet? Not quite yet. Does have the command center going down. And already, I want to say, oh wow, yeah, I haven't been able to get siege mode yet. How do I do that if I want to mech against Terran? Ideally, I would want that as fast as possible. So let's actually speed it up and note that, so Jinro was already very far down the line with his factory when he started the refinery. Quite far down the line when he started it. And he has enough gas to build a tank right away, but not enough to get the siege mode right away. So already this is the timing I want to say, is that we try to get our barracks at around, 12 after our supply depot at 10, get our refinery on 13, get our orbital command at 15, and then when we have enough money to build, oh, there's the factory. If we have enough money to build this factory, what we then end up doing is trying to get the gas as quickly as possible after that factory starts. Because I think one of the most important lessons that you'll learn in RTS is that trying to get stuff out fast is almost always better than trying to get more stuff out a little bit later. I mean, this is a horrible example, but let's say you want to go mass scout in StarCraft 1 in Brood War. Theoretically, you could triple gas at like 18 food, and you would have so much gas you could get a ton of scouts, because if you're trying to go scouts and get like triple upgrades, it's very expensive for the gas, and it's kind of hard to get that up. So if you start trying to stockpile it up early so you can eventually spend it, it actually turns out to be worse, because there's a long period of vulnerability and total passivity. Likewise, if you want to be going mass mech and you want to be expanding and do a lot of cute stuff with it, if you try to get too much gas too early to support lots of tanks and lots of Thors and lots of upgrades, what will happen is that you will get that stuff eventually, but up until that point, the player who went Marine Marauder will just take the whole map. So get things out very, very fast. And the comparison that I'm thinking right now in this game is that this guy, Naruto, he is getting his second geyser much, much, much earlier. And as a result, he is ending up with his factory out later. He's throwing in a little bit of variety, doing this this double marine stuff a little bit earlier. And also Naruto's money is high because looks like he was in fact not going to be going for some sort of mech opening quite yet. Instead, he's just opening up with a bunch of marines and going straight for Starport. And even then, note that still has a little bit of a gas excess, so we could have gotten away with getting the second gas a little bit later. And also he has 2 in the gas, so brr. But yeah, so already I'm liking this replay as a tool for me in my Terran vs. Terran explorations, because Jinro is getting this mech style, and I've been trying to experiment with mech. Cool, I get the chance to have some insight into that. But also, he's up against one of the more common openings, which is very fast double starport in Terran vs. Terran. I mean, my build, the one I described, I've actually lost twice to it recently, trying to go for a barracks with a reactor and then this a fast factory. I mean, it bugs me quite a bit. This double starport build, and this is very standard to use your barracks and your factory to get 2 add-ons. Normally, not the reactor and the tech lab. Actually, more commonly, it is the double tech lab instead of one of each. Because Banshees are just, like, so favored. But, of course, he's going to lift off both and then do the switcheroo. So, we do see that Jinro is playing everything out pretty normally. He is getting a lot of Marines with Siege mode, and one of the transitions I've been considering with this mech is that right after you start making your first tank, maybe even skipping Siege mode, or maybe even, hell, skipping the first tank, just going straight for an armory so I can begin Thor production right away, because this is just so damn common. If I definitively see he's making a huge ground army, then undeniably the Siege Tank Marine combination en masse is going to be really, really, really strong against that. But I don't really know if there's a good way to deal with this sort of mass Viking stuff, or even, mass Banshee stuff, or even Viking Banshee, which is what we're seeing Naruto do right now. Again, this is just some nice, friendly experimentation that these players are doing. Jinro's expansion's done. He's getting his geyser, his expansion very quickly. Now, this is something I do stand by, is getting the refineries at your expansion quite quickly when you're going mech, because you get broke fast doing it. And also note, when you have an early expansion, you end up with this sort of uneven worker count, or you even have some idols back in your main because you're getting it so quickly. So, now, it's always important not to get too ahead of yourself when you're watching replays. Generally, if I watch a replay between 2 good players, I watch it real slow. That's actually one of the nice reasons for doing this daily. For me, that's a complete selfish douche. I get the chance to look at the games really slowly and try to talk what I'm seeing. And just the pace of talking is so much slower than the pace of trying to analyze really quickly just in my head. So I'm kind of forced to slow down and actually think about what's going on. So, watch replays with friends a lot of the time on like Skype, or even if you have a buddy in real life play StarCraft 2 with, just, watch and chat. So what's Jinro doing here? Let's pause. So he got a really fast starport, and he's making a Viking out of it. Just a Viking. I mean, he's not getting an add-on. I'm actually kind of looking around here. Whoa, is there like a barracks with a tech lab? Is there a factory with a tech lab? No, he's just getting a Viking. Why would that be the case? You heard me say just 2 seconds ago that, like, I've been losing to Mass Banshee, a player who just opens up, straight rushes to Banshees, gets 2 Banshees out really fast, sometimes even getting cloaking out, and it's incredibly... it's important to swallow before you begin inhaling during breath. There we go. Yes. I've been saying that I've been losing a ton to this Mass Banshee stuff when I go just for this tank Marine stuff, as well as if I go for Marine Marauder. So, in addition to just getting a bunch of tanks and Marines out, which is a standard staple of the build, he's just rushing for 1 Viking. Because 1 Viking will completely shut down any sort of Banshee action. And as we can see, it's actually quite well timed. I mean, look at this Viking. It's almost done. And if we go back to Naruto's base, it looks like his Banshee just finished. It looks like his own Vikings, there they are, his Vikings came out just a little bit earlier. But I mean, the Banshee is already done. The Banshee only just recently finished, so I mean, I really like the timing of this to deal with that Mass Banshee sort of stuff. And in addition, Jinro is getting Thors. I like this follow-up. I mean, I was partly thinking to rush for Thors at the factory, so that way I could, murder all these Vikings and all the Banshees and feel awesome about myself, because Thors really do demolish mass Terran air. But I guess... Okay, so here's my entire thought process. I've been considering rushing Thor because it crushes the opponent's big air composition, and also this gives me the chance to put pressure on the opponent. Again, there's a lot of solutions for staying alive, but try to think of the solutions that let you stay alive and do something more to, like, put pressure back on the opponent. So for instance, the reason I like Jinro getting this Viking out fast is that he can scout with it, he can completely shut down Banshees, he can chase after the Banshees. That's stuff that no turrets can do or anything like that. And the reason I like Thor rushing is I can take my 10, 12, 14 Marines that I'll have by then and my Thor and go push. I haven't tested it too much, but it's still, a thought I've been having against these sort of early teching players. And, of course, Jinro's follow-up to get the Thor very quickly is good as well. And getting turrets, obviously, a good idea. You never want to completely skip turrets by any regard. I do think Jinro should also be sieging these tanks up and having some more spotters. Oh, hey, thank you, Jinro. You're so kind to me. And here comes Naruto. Alright, cool, now he's doing this harassment. And, so he flies by and sees the Thor. Uh-oh. So this is pretty interesting, because already in this replay... we're seeing a lot of steps of evolution of play already accounted for. So let's actually begin at the beginning and just go through all those, right? Mass Marine Marauder, everyone hates that, no one wants to do it anymore, except for Morrow. He'll probably do it till the day he dies, right? So everyone loves this Marine Marauder junk. Lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so players start trying to figure out ways to go mech, and they're starting having success with a lot of Marines and a lot of tanks. That's what I started at the start. So then players start going, well, hey, Banshees got buffed, and Banshees are also good. Let me start rushing Banshee. And all of a sudden, these builds that just crushed Marines and Marauders, now they're having trouble, so they're having to think another step ahead. So Jinro did that. He thought the step ahead, got the Viking out to deal with the Banshees. So now we have the one step by Naruto. Oh, well, if you're going to get 1 Viking to try to kill my Banshees, I'm just going to get a reactor on my starport. I'm going to get 2 Vikings at a time. So that way I can kill your stuff that kills my Banshees. And even though I'm not going to have 6 Banshees to really kill you fast, I'll still have 2, 3, 4 Banshees that might kill you a little bit more slowly, but it's like guaranteed damage. So they're already advancing quite far forward. This is actually in a series of games that they played against one another just for practice. So, yep, everything seems pretty normal from this point. So... whoopsie daisies, ideally you don't want to be flying all your air units into turrets. I think that's less than optimal. So big mass air coming out by Naruto. Cool transition for the mid game. People have had a lot of success recently doing this. And as we see, we have a second starport with a tech lab out already. And again, I said that, players love their Banshees, but that's why Naruto just favored getting this starport with this reactor first, just because he wanted to get enough Vikings to completely shut down any Viking antics that that Jinro is going to do. And I also really like this decision to throw down a command center, not just because Naruto kind of messed up with his macro, and his macro could have been better, but also because if you have a lot of air, theoretically you have tons of mobility, you have cloaking. Is there any cloaking coming out? No, not yet. I'm going to turn on the production tab to keep track of that. But you have the mobility to sort of contain your opponent and manage him a little bit better. Unfortunately, because this map is Steps of War, this is a map-specific thing. You can just walk right up here, and look at this. Okay, this is some real fancy shit. Oh my god, I love Jinro. Oh my god. Allow me to be less favoritistic. I love this Viking. This Viking not only was pivotal in defending that Banshee harass, but also pivotal in doing other stuff, namely providing the sight range to allow these tanks to shoot up the high ground. And of course, Naruto's going to come up and kill off the Viking, and that's going to be the end of that. But think about that. That is so key. That's so subtle and so key. The Viking, a key unit for defense, that just a few moments later is a key unit in the attack, in an early attack. Turrets, you could have made turrets to hold off those Banshees. That would have been great. But you would have had zero ability to do this right here. Yeah, you could have floated a barracks forward, but it's a little flimsy to rely too exclusively on barracks, just because the range of these of a lot of units can wipe it out, or especially, if you're against an army where you need to be more mobile, barracks are slow. You don't want to rely just on them for floating around. So Jinro has a handful of clueless Thors just sort of bumping into each other. No big deal. He's continuing to just mass up Thors. Is he getting upgrades? No, not quite yet. Just continuing to push. What's nice about Thors is that you can do this if your opponent is getting air, because the Thors just crush air so quickly. But this is also part of the reason why I'm liking, early on, getting a barracks with a reactor. Because not only do I have the ability to do early aggression with the Thors and the Marines, but I have the ability to do aggression all game long with Marines and Thors. Because it's when you get in situations like this where it's a lot of little things attacking it, where you have like Marines and Vikings and everything shooting at it, I like the idea of getting a bunch of Marines to just serve as big meat shields for these Thors. Because, with just air, the Thor ended up getting taken out, so... Uh-oh. Ooh, that's kind of fancy. Oh, nice job, Naruto. That was actually very sick by Naruto there. And hey, look, he has a gold mineral patch to boot. That's pretty awesome. Meanwhile, Jinro's actually behind. He's at 50 food, and his opponent's at 57 food. And that's something that I like to always stop and sort of check out, is anytime after there's been a big conflict or exchange, just kind of check some tabs. Okay, so Naruto, he's behind on SCVs. Jinro's ahead on SCVs. Naruto's ahead in food. Jinro's behind on food. Pretty even, actually, I would say. And, never forget that Vikings can land and take out turrets. I know that sounds silly, but it's very easy to get those subconsciously ingrained things like, run away from turret if you're a Viking, instead of just, landing. Now, Jinro's getting a Raven, and I'm not so sure about the Raven choice. Where is that Raven? Yeah, there it is. Ordinarily, I would like a Raven, because, so let's do the exercise ourselves, rather than me just, asserting that it's true, and you going, oh, okay, let's just, spend just a few seconds time thinking about it, because, hell, it's my show. So, Raven, cool unit, great. But don't think of it as just the unit, right? You want to think about a problem you're facing with, and saying, you want to think of a problem you're faced with, and say, what can solve this problem? So, for instance... Hey, I'm Jinro. I'm opening up for a whole bunch of Thors. I'm doing a bunch of fancy stuff with them. I can deal with air. I can do some pushes. Whatever. The problem that I have with Thor, and that pretty much everyone has with a Thor, is that if your opponent gets a bunch of Marauders, and whatever protecting units you have in front of the Thors die, the Marauders just run up and kill it immediately, so fast. It's actually the big reason why players avoid mech entirely, is because it just dies so fast to Marauders. And the Marauders' shots kill them really, really quickly. So, if you get a Raven, you can throw down a point defense drone. And that just demolishes Marauders. Oh my god, it kills them so fast. For any of you who don't know what the point defense drone is, it's a little floating orb with energy, and for a little bit of energy, it will zap any incoming projectile. So literally, your Thors don't take damage for 3 to 5 seconds when there's a ton of Marauders firing at it. Which is huge! That's so awesome! So this Raven in general, I'm thinking, oh, this Raven's cool because it can solve this problem with the point defense drone. It can kill those Marauders super easily. But I don't see any Marauders, right? I don't even see a barracks with a tech lab. I mean, I just see air. So I guess you could try to use it with the Banshees. I mean, it does end up working with the Banshee shots. I'm almost certain of that. But, you know, I prefer just getting more Thors, really, if the opponent's just getting a bunch of air. Just because the Thor's damage output is so insane. So actually this is smart by Jinro to get a few tanks in here. You don't want to be over-committed to just Mondo anti-air. A few tanks are going to help a bunch. And also sensor towers. What problem do sensor towers solve? Well, my Thors are really immobile, so I want to have them in the right place at the right time, but sometimes it's hard to know that, so I'm getting a sensor tower. Would not mind at all a sensor tower right here. Just because our opponent's going air. If our opponent was not getting a big air army like that, I wouldn't want to get a sensor tower. But see, here's the strength of air. Being able to do this. And hey, there isn't any defenses here. Maybe I'll just land my Vikings. Oh, no, looks like he's being a little more cautious. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with what Naruto did there. Completely and totally good thing to do. Continuing to macro pretty well. Now adding on more barracks. Again, this is a very standard transition of all sorts. Air into ground. Now, I'm not saying that that's one transition, because that statement is about like 50 different ones. I mean, you can do this off one base. You can just get 2 starports and just get 4 Banshees and stop that and switch right on over to getting a big Marine Marauder army. There's a ton of different ways to do it, but the basic idea is the same. Banshees, I guess even compared to StarCraft 2, but definitely when compared to StarCraft 1, it's one of the few air units that does serious damage to ground. Think about StarCraft 1 for a minute. Mutalisks do 9 damage to ground. They're probably the scariest unit in terms of killing off ground stuff. Wraiths do 8 damage, Scouts do 8 damage, just not a lot of damage output by those fast mobile air units. And Mutalisk wins with 9 and a little bouncy attack. But here you have Banshees that do 24 damage a shot. That's so much. I'm actually just going to double check that. Yeah, 24 damage. That's so much. So, you need to be extra careful of just protecting your base and your workers and all this other stuff. So, because the Banshee damage output is the way it is, and there's Banshee Cloak, it means that a defending player has to get serious anti-air defense, which eats into his ability to deal with any sort of big mobile ground push. So that's why we love that transition into some sort of big barracks composition, because we know our opponent has screwed up his composition to deal with the air. In particular, we have extra turrets, we have Thors being made by the huge numbers. Look at this. Tons of Thors coming out, more factories. No doubt Tech Lab's going to be popping off on those in just a second. But I mean, with that sort of huge anti-air count, if you just transition to a bunch of Marauders, it's going to be awesome, especially if you were smart enough to take gold expansions the way Naruto was. Because then you have the ability to make out of 6-7 barracks or something like that. Naruto looks like he wants to continually make these air units. Nothing wrong with that. But again, that idea of air into ground, you mess up the composition of your opponent by getting all this air, and you can exploit his composition by going for mass Marauder. So again, all good players. We'll do some sort of preparation like what Jinro's doing. Ooh, clustering them. Oh my god, look at the Thors eliminating them immediately. This is one issue with air, is that it can be very flimsy, especially when you cluster up all your Vikings like that. Ooh, whoopsie daisies. Yeah, look, Naruto, once he gets gets out of the battle, like, oh god, I'm gonna give a little emergency face right there. And Jinro doing :S? I don't even know. That hurts my face to try to think about how to make that. And of course, Jinro doing the good sort of standard play, doing some aggression after your opponent has lost a huge army, not attacking the front all in, but just getting in a pretty decent position. Notice how these guys pretty much held position, just barely in range. Good stuff, good stuff. And Naruto adding on a tank of his own, but now just getting mass Marauder. And this is actually pre-patched, so Marauders actually came with concussion shells in this replay. But still, I mean, the basic idea does apply. And of course, one thing that's awesome about Cloak is that you can do these sort of antics. Sure, you lost 2 Banshees, but you killed a Thor, so the trade's pretty good. And again, the insane mobility of these Banshees allow you to do a lot of nutty expanding. Wouldn't even mind an expansion being thrown down here, an island expansion being thrown down. These are all options that I think that have been underexplored by Naruto. Definitely this island expansion, because that's probably the most inconvenient for Jinro to go for. This expansion is really convenient for Jinro, because he just walks there. Right? He's already expanding here. He wants to loop his expansions down this ramp and over here to this gold mineral patch. So now we have ourselves a very standard looking game. Just air and some Marine Marauder compositions. And we have some tanks with some Thors thrown in there to deal with the air. So listen to how I said that. I think I probably say this once every other cast. I'll even come to the main camera to do it, as I do pretty much every time. It's so crucial to think what the normal step is, like what the middle is. So the middle looking normal game is I have Thors and tanks, you have air and Marauders. And the key is, if you're aware of that, then every decision you make is just trying to help you get to that point. So for instance, all that early game, pausing and discussion I did at the start of the cast for those of you who are tuned in, a lot of that was because I was saying, okay, now here's this decision that might seem good now, but I need to think about it in terms of how does it help me get to that end point. So getting those Vikings out to do a little bit of harassment with the Banshees that Naruto did makes perfect sense. I need to get more Vikings to shut down Jinro's Vikings, because then that means I have more air dominance. So that way, Jinro has to get more anti-air, so that way my transition into these Marauders is even stronger. So good stuff to look at this point and say, okay, cool. This looks pretty good by both players. If it were something like Jinro had these two bases and Naruto had this one, and he had this one, and was gearing up to expand to this one, you should immediately stop and go, whoa, something went wrong at the start there. Too many decisions were made that didn't contribute to this look of game. And then you back up and you fix those. The problems tend to manifest themselves a little bit far down the road, so it's important to back up super early and try to find them as early as possible. Cool stuff, getting that high-sec auto-tracking, which for those of you who don't know this is the upgrade at the engineering bay, which ups turret range by 1. Again, Jinro having to invest in that really good anti-air, because his opponent is getting so much air. He doesn't want to do that by any means. And very important to just say that properly. Not to go, oh man, if I see my opponent going air, I should get this high-sec auto-tracking for my turrets, because then I'll really be able to crush his Banshees a lot more easily. You should instead think of it as saying, well, I kind of have to get it, so I can actually manage his air a little bit better. And Naruto's just praying, I hope he gets that upgrade. That will screw him up a lot. Well, actually, it's more that Naruto says, if he doesn't get that upgrade, I will screw him up a bunch. And if he gets that upgrade, then we're back to even again. Still forced him to make more money and waste more time than he wants to. And God, look how much damage they do to ground. That's what makes these Banshees so difficult to deal with. And now, all of a sudden, when we end up throwing in Marauders into this mix, these Banshees didn't stop being high damage output units. I can just run right up here and kill off all these Thors. Look how fast these Thors end up falling. I don't see the point defense drone being thrown down yet. There it is. Now he has 100 energy. So there is the point defense drone. Now watch it zap all these Marauder shots. See that laser coming out of it? None of that is doing any damage. I'm actually going to rewind. And we're going to see many more of those come up in this series. Or actually just in this game. So speeding things up a touch. Speeding things up. Alright, so the point defense drone is up. See, look at these Marauder shots trying to come out, and it's zapping all of them down. No damage is being dealt to these Thors. Look at all those Marauder shots it absorbed. That's so much damage. I mean, that's like well over 400 hit points saved by that Raven. Actually, it might be 400 hit points exactly. And then Jinro's able to clean this up much more easily. Got some idols, but right after a huge battle, it seems pretty normal. But still, exploiting this mobility. Honestly, Naruto could have way more barracks. He could probably have twice this number of barracks with Tech Labs making. I mean, even clearly from his money count, he could be doing that. But again, it just goes to show that Jinro was a little close in terms of holding that attack off. That point defense drone helped significantly. And if there were 10 more Marauders, it would have been lights out. So that definitely goes to show the importance of macros. So, I mean, if I were watching this game, I would, I'd probably watch the rest of it. But, if I were Naruto, I'd be like, oh, God, I really should have added on more barracks. And it looks like he's adding on more now. But it's absolutely something to work on for future games. And now that we have over 2,500 viewers, I want to say tune in tomorrow, 7 p.m. Pacific, for Day 9 Daily number 100, where I'll just talk about my life playing StarCraft and just being part of the StarCraft community, the lows, the highs, and the funny stories, and etc. Just continuing to make this big Thor composition. And notice how much this feels like mech in StarCraft 1. In StarCraft 1, if the Zerg player got any Mutalisks at all, the Terran player suddenly had to get a huge number of Goliaths, because Goliaths are not very good in small numbers, but they get a lot better when you get more and more and more of them because of that unbelievable range they have. So this means that if Zerg suddenly stops making a lot of Mutalisks, the Terran still has to make Goliaths because there's always that threat that Zerg can throw them out. And a lot of very good Zerg players always have like 8 or so Mutalisks. Not a lot for a Zerg player in that situation. And it forces the Terran to have way more Goliaths than he would want. And that's the exact thing that we're seeing here. Jinro doesn't want to get all these Thors. He wants to get a bunch of tanks to be able to deal with this huge Marauder army. And he really only wants to have 2 Thors to deal with Banshees. But Naruto has had upwards of like 10, 12 Banshees this game. So it is important to continue to get these Thors. It's the sacrifice Jinro has to make in this situation in order to stay alive. Favor these Thors first so he doesn't die to air, and then he can back up and start getting some more tanks. Still more Thors coming out. By the way, big upgrades on the Thors. So notice that it does 55 damage. And if you do the math on that, 55 times 2 is oftentimes 110, which means a Thor kills a stimmed Marauder in one shot. Very important number. Plus 2 upgrades, very good for Thors against Marauders. Definitely helps quite a bit. You can't quite get that with siege tanks, but it's the splash damage. It definitely makes it good. So I had something else I wanted to say, but whatever. I'll just continue talking about something else. So Jinro doing real passive stuff here. We like passivity as mech. We're very strong if we're positioned well. So no need to sort of sprint up aggressively into positions. Note, for instance, this still looks juicy, right? Doing some push to here so you can take out this expansion seems great. However, I think it is the biggest mistake in the world to just take this mix of army that you have and to just try to walk it right here really aggressively and immediately straight siege it up. Most good players will be able to position their army properly a lot more quickly. A mobile army like this can almost always exploit an immobile army trying to be mobile. So, if you wanted to push down here at this expansion, how would you do it? Well, you would say, well, I don't want to walk here. I should say I don't want to just sprint with my army all the way up here. The smart thing to do would be to say, hey, you know what? I can position myself here and then slowly waltz down. So my plan would be expand here, and then eventually expand to this right spot. And then when I have this right spot, I'll do a little push down to this expansion, take this, and then do the very short walk distance from here to here. And I even have this high ground covering me, so I only need to worry about one angle of attack. That would be the best way to approach taking out this expansion. Since that is not the case, since Jinro has all stuff up here, nothing wrong at all with doing a nice, slow, gentle push, using the high ground, throwing down a sensor tower. Oh my goodness, that's so slow. And that's really good. I want you to note that that is actually very good. For a very immobile army, just embrace how immobile you are. And just think that it is totally rad. So again, those Thors are awesome against killing off air units. Now, okay, so let's rewind that because there was some insane use of point defense drone right there. So let's speed up. So, okay, so we are on slower. My favorite way to watch battles. So, here we go. There's some shots going down at that sensor tower. Look at this, just ripping through these. Okay, now watch how much damage these Marauders start to do. Okay. Did you see how quickly this Thor dropped to half-life? However, I want you to note that here are 2-point defense drones that are going to get thrown down. And I'm just going to hold the mouse over this so you can read it. It's point defense laser. Automated defense laser that intercepts enemy projectiles. It's that little zap that comes out that removes the Marauder shells. So I'm going to go ahead and rewind it just a few more times so we can just see it happen perfectly, because I wanted to point out that Thor life just briefly. So here it comes. And okay, now keep an eye on the life of these front row Thors. Look at it. Look at all the zapping those point defense drones are doing. Look how no damage was taken. And look how many Marauder shots went off. That is so good. A Raven follow-up, once you see your opponent once you've made a bunch of Thors, is fantastic. Especially if you see your opponent starting to get these Marauders. I still think Jinro may have gotten it just a touch too early this game. That's why I mentioned that. But, I mean, really, really friggin' strong for those later stages. So Naruto, again, look at the mobility that Naruto has. Oh, well, I was all the way here with a huge force, and it didn't end up working, so I will sprint down here and completely annihilate this expansion. I honestly think Naruto could have done this a lot earlier when Jinro was being a little passive down here, and I definitely think that is a big lesson to be learned. In Terran vs. Terran, if your opponent's going mech, he's immobile, try to attack any expansion that you can. Even doing a lot of these Marauder sprint-ups. Here comes one sprint up. See you later, tank. Just got one-shotted by a bunch of Marauders. Now going up here, look how fast these Thors fall to these Marauders. Look at how insanely fast those Thors fell. Now, Jinro is going to defend, but not before losing a whole bunch of units. And Jinro, of course, just creeping along the map, just first waltzing up here to the top side, walking here to the bottom side, and now he's going to just do some happy-dandy cleanup. So, he has some firing going on from these tanks. Still, I mean, look at the money count. Could have easily gotten more barracks much, much, much sooner. I actually think Naruto probably would have won. I think his opening was just ridiculously, ridiculously strong. As we can see, I mean, Naruto's mass air opening was able to stop a turret Thor push right here just with the air units. I mean, that goes to show you just how strong those Banshees are against ground. So definitely good opening by Naruto. I think the execution was a little off, almost certainly because these players are making huge adjustments on the fly, as they've also played a lot of games against each other when this one was played. And I think it's pretty clear only now that Jinro is going to be able to win this game very, very easily. Before then, it was quite ambiguous. And I mean, even food count-wise, players are really close. And now we have Jinro expanding all over the map. I'm going to go ahead and slow it down since the game... it's going to be a little slow from here on out, and that, I think, is also important to note. Think of how bored you're going to be from now till the end of the game, as there isn't really that much action. However, that's the way that mech ends up working in StarCraft 2 and in StarCraft 1. I mean, the Thor just moves so damn slow, and tanks need to be not moving in order to be sieged, right? So you should just embrace these long, slow, boa constrictor just waiting for the opponent to suffocate sort of wins. And see, look, slowly moving over here to this side of the map. Took like 2 minutes to move the entire army here in good position. And look at this. Marauders dart up, kill the Expo, and they will dart right back out. So mobile. So mobile. But look, great use of point defense drones. 100 energy for each one. So, if a Raven is fully charged, you can have 2 of them. So, getting 3 Ravens out. Not an excess of Ravens. But still getting Ravens out. And one thing I've consistently noticed this game is that Jinro's had a lot of money. You should never say to yourself, hey, I was able to win, and I didn't spend money. You should say, how could I have spent that money in some constructive way so I could have won even harder faster? And I'm curious about some transitions to getting barracks, more barracks units to be to help with that mobility issue, to help with protecting the Thors from the Marauders. To punish Marauders for trying to dart up and target fire in the midst of those point defense drones. But hey, look, for the first time ever, abusing this location that was abused at the start of the game. Naruto's still hanging in there with a really mobile army, some nice little base trading action going on. Very awesome game. Like, it was entertaining to watch it the first time I watched it, but also it's cool to go through this because... actually, I'll just wait for this thing to end. Oh my god. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, there's another point defense drone lesson for you. Holy crap. It's a point drone lesson for me. God. Those things are awesome. Yeah, look, throwing down 3-point defense drones. Look at the health of this front Thor. Only took damage from the tank. And look, more point defense drones. Yeah, look at the health of the Thors. Nothing, 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 nothing. Oh, got one. Thanks to that tank. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Kick ass. Point defense drones are pretty sick. And it's pretty typical cleanup from that. So I'm going to pause this game. We're going to return to the camera. I'm going to unmute the chat and vamp for a little bit. Do you guys? And when I unmute the chat, I must ask: Do you guys like this fancy schmancy new webcam? Is the webcam fancy? Oh yeah, there's some autofocus on my camera that's like really annoying. And again, I only just got it installed, so I'm just gonna keep my head really still. I'm just not gonna move my head. I'm gonna flail my arms like crazy, but I'm gonna be like a chicken with head tracking, man. No movement. Shh. So, why was that an awesome game? Well, first of all, we saw two completely different styles of Terran. It was almost like watching two different players play. We got the chance to look at how the players are trying to one-up each other in those early game battles, like with Jinro getting the Viking, and Naruto responds by getting a fast double Viking. So that was super kick-ass, right? But then also, oh my god, looks like we have some spammers spamming in the channel, and I'll be delighted to perm ban them for life. Oh, looks like he's trying to, oh my goodness, moderator chat only. Uh-oh, what's gonna happen? Oh, well, I'll just wait for the moderator chat to pop in there. There we go. So, but yeah, and I love the fact that it transitioned into that really mobile mid-game yeah, ban for life. Clear user message. Fantastic. Smacking down with the ban hammer, so we can return to using the thought hammer on this game. But yeah, so we got to see those two completely different openings by those two players. One that was entirely mech focused. We got to see the one-upmanship that was going on there. But in particular, how they ended up behaving in the mid-game stages with, Jinro being very passive and sort of stayed back, all the way into some solid late-game transitions by both players. Most players end up going mass Marauder, but Naruto also throwing in some tanks there. Don't know if that's necessarily good or bad, but cool to see the variety there. And also it allows him to micro his Marauders around, use that insane range on the tanks to do some serious damage there. So that way he can micro a little bit more easily. So let's go ahead and let's happily ban some people. Yes, ban IP forever. Yes, fantastic. Alright, awesome. Okay, cool. Let's take some questions. Oh yeah, I love this question by Deflam, who says, what are your thoughts on the Thor 250mm cannon ability? It seems like it's underused. Is it just too much APM to use, or does it just suck? So, the situations I've specifically seen it used are Thor drops and Terran vs. Zerg. Thor drops are sick in Terran vs. Zerg. If you just get two dropships, two medevacs, wrong game. If you get two medevacs with the Thors, drop them by an expansion from Zerg. First of all, note that most Zergs are getting primarily roaches against Terran, so they generally don't have incredibly good anti-air, so you can generally float there pretty easily. So you land, Thors instantly, one shot each at the Queen there, Queen's immediately dead. You both target, with both Thors on the hatchery with 250mm cannon, drops it down to like 100 life, and you just shoot it with your Thors, load up, and run away. Such an easy way to completely kill an expansion. So I think that the best strength they have is against buildings. It does not do splash damage, as far as I know in the testing I've done. Definitely have not seen it do splash damage. So the real question, I think, is, are there going to be is there going to be any unit that it would specifically target, unless you're referring to the Colossus or the Ultralisk? Probably not, but there could be some cool building harass. For instance, if your opponent's going mainly Marauder, you can still get the medevac with the Thor drop, maybe take out a command center, or maybe take out a supply depot. I haven't really found a good use for it in Terran vs. Terran, but Terran vs. Zerg, it's definitely awesome. So here's a great question by Sauter, who says, Dear Day. Oh, well, thank you. I love being referred to as dear by my viewers. You noted that it is worse to stockpile resources to build more later than it is to get fast tech, or whatever. In Brood War, in the 3-hatch Mutalisk, compared to 2-hatch, that slows down the speed of the Mutalisk in favor of a larger group when they do pop out. When is it okay to sacrifice faster units for more units? So, I I have an issue with that example because it's not that you are going 3-hatch Mutalisks, so you have more when your Spire finishes. I guarantee you can get 9 Mutalisks out going 2-hatch faster than you can get 9 Mutalisks out when you're going 3-hatch. More importantly, 3-hatch Mutalisk is a very economically focused play. So in both cases, what you should say is that both these builds are good because you are not stockpiling any resources. You're in 2-hatch, you're spending all of it on Mutalisks, and sure, you let it save up, so that way you can have 6 Mutalisks when your Spire pops, but that's not like stockpiling it for later use. That's stockpiling it specifically so you can drop it down to 0 at a precise time. And likewise, 3-hatch, you're spending all the money on the extra hatchery, on the extra drones, getting the extra Zerglings and the upgrades out. In both cases, they're solid builds because your money is constantly going straight down to 0. So the answer is that, in general, if you're spending your money like super low, you're doing something right. And the main point was not like, when should I be getting fast units? When should I be getting more units? The idea is just keeping your money very, 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 very low. In StarCraft 1, I think this is the best example of this. Terran vs. Protoss in Brood War used to be the case where players would simply go tank vulture aggressive pushes all game long. They would early expand, and then they would get 5 factories and just blitz the opponent. And if that didn't work, they would blitz them a little while later. And what happened is that the Terran players weren't getting upgrades, weren't teching, they weren't getting science vessels, so they ended up with a huge gas stockpile. And on forums, and even in the popular belief of that day, players were like, no, yeah, it's completely fine to just have a big stockpile of gas because minerals are the one you want to keep low, and you're spending the minerals. How else would you spend resources as Terran? There's no way to spend the gas. And then Flash came along, and he got the +2/+1 upgrade for his mech incredibly quickly, got science vessels incredibly quickly, and as a result, raped his opposition, right? Had his gas at dead 0 like all game long, and was so incredibly effective for a long time, and no Protosses could beat him. Until, obviously, Protosses started stepping it up a little bit more. So, again, the idea is just keep your money very, very, very low. And anytime you have a money excess, as we saw in this game, where there's 3,000 minerals by Jinro, you should stop and not say, what can I do with 3,000 minerals now? Instead, you should say, how could I have never gotten to 3,000 minerals in the first place? A few options. 1, I could start building Marines like crazy, really, really early on. 2, I need to start expanding like crazy much earlier when I go mech. 3, I don't need to build as many SCVs on minerals. And in particular, I don't really need to build that many mules. I can actually save all my mules for scans because I just don't need that money. Oh, totally kick ass. Now all of a sudden, instead of, just saying, how do I spend the money? We're figuring out more ways to just keep it low. Just keep that money low, and you'll have a lot of creative solutions to stuff. Loomis Meister says, I love you. Thank you. I love you too. So fantastic. Oh, yes. Nitrous says, Day9, in the Jinro vs. Naruto game, could Jinro have placed his tanks near the minerals so the tanks fire on Naruto's expansion? Would the Thor be able to defend the tanks from the Banshees? What's your opinion? It's close. That is a tactic that I think is strong and that you should do, but the Banshees just do so much damage, and players are really good at transitioning to it. It's actually so close that it's one of those things that I would want to practice a lot. So what I would probably do is be like, hey man, I've done this opening, I can get a Viking, a tank, 2 Thors, and 4 Marines out decently quickly. I'm going to push you, and I want you to try to defend it with 3 Banshees and 2 Vikings. Okay, now I want you to try to defend it with 4 Banshees, and now 5 Banshees, and now 6 Banshees, and try to see when you start losing really bad. Or, okay, now I want you to try to stop it with 1 Banshee and 3 Marauders. Actually, I know the 3 Marauders will get raped there, but still, you want to try, you want to throw some stuff out. And that is a great way to get a lot of, what am I talking about? That's a way to get a lot of education as though you played multiple games from one game. People saying for me, oh my god, it feels weird to have your camera up top. It totally does for me. It actually hurts my neck. I'm used to hunching like a little question mark at my computer, and I'm used to looking actually here. Here is where I used to look. This is where that camera used to be, so now I'm having to just like sit up straight, and you can... Oh, God, there's some good net cracking that happened. Oh, yeah, how long will the stream tomorrow be, the expected length? Probably over an hour, probably like hour 20 minutes. I don't know, I haven't prepared it, because stupid grad school getting in the way of things. But, you know, I'm going to try to fix all this stuff. Once again, I just got this fancy webcam thanks to your guys' donations. 100% of donations that people have sent to me, I've just reinvested straight into the stream. I got a whole bunch of new equipment ordered. It'll be fantastic. Horde was asking about the pixelation of the stream. Yeah, sincerest apologies about that. That's just because live stream caps me at 500 kilobits per second. Let's see. Oh yeah, Horde also asked questions about StarCraft. I should answer those as well. So what do I think about Hellions versus light units? And tanks unsieged versus armoreds? How about yeah, I'll just stop right there. You had a second part of the question, but I'm just going to answer that first one because I have a lot to say about it. So I have been thinking about Hellions. I have not yet tested them. Hellions are very, very, very sick against light units, especially if you get that upgrade. So I don't know if a pure mech, where you're just going Hellion tank, would be that strong against an infantry Terran. Seems logically consistent, right? You know, I have a ton of Hellions to absorb damage from the Marauders. The Marauders don't do a full 20 damage to the Hellions. My tanks can fire on the Marauders from afar, and my Hellions completely demolish any sort of Marines. Seems good. The issue, again, is getting there. How do I get to that spot? Because the mech player is almost forced to get those Thors, because he needs the Thor in case there is any anti-air whatsoever. Or perhaps he should be going tank Hellion Viking. Now, as I'm starting to talk about it, there's more ways to go about doing that. But, again, any issue with Hellion tank rests on the idea of how do I get there. And also about tanks unsieged versus armored units. For any of you who didn't know this, an unsieged tank deals more damage to an armored target than a sieged tank. Unsieged tanks deal damage very, very quickly. They don't have splash, but they deal more damage unsieged than a tank sieged to an armored unit. So the way that I've seen this used is mainly by Terrans early expanding, and if the Terrans early expanding against Protoss, in order to defend some early pushes, they'll just get a Ghost and spend a lot of gas on the Ghost and the EMP, and then if any Immortals come up, they can just constantly move the tank away, because tanks outrange Immortals by quite a bit. That is pretty much the best way, the best use of that I've seen. However, StarCraft 2 hasn't even been released yet. So isn't it fucking cool that players have figured out unsieged tanks to deal with early Immortal pushes with Ghosts just by microing like that. That is how you see the birth of micros, players just trying to get away with stuff. So I will happily just take one or two more questions. Oh, Davey pointing something out here. The use of Raven also detects in case Cloaked Banshees happen. Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's dead on the money. I'm very glad Davey brought that up. So I'll take a question as well. I should probably do that too. So let's see here. Siggy said, you mentioned that Jinro probably would have preferred not to get so many Thors to counter air, comparing them to Goliaths in Brood War. Do you feel that Thors are a proper replacement for Goliaths, or does their insane ground damage give them enough of a tank-like role that excess Thors are more useful than Goliaths? So first of all, I know this is going to sound stupid, but StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2, be very careful with trying to compare them. Because I guarantee you that if StarCraft 2 were not called StarCraft 2, if it were called, Warcraft 4 or something, no one would be comparing the Thor to the Goliath, not really. But I will answer that question independently about what do I feel about Thors as just a nice tank-like role, being perhaps more useful than Goliaths. Thors are awesome against ground. For any of you who have not used Thors just a lot as a good army composition, they're amazing. They do 90 damage per shot, unupgraded. So what does this mean? If you're against a Protoss player, you can EMP all his gateway units, and your Thors one-shot them. I cannot tell you how many frustrating Terran vs. Protosses I have played as I'm the Protoss, and I have perfect macro. I literally could not be a better player. And then he comes in with like 10 Hellions, 2 ghosts and like 5 Thors, and I have like a maxed army, and just blanket EMPs. The Hellions immediately die. I'm like, I got this. And I just ignore the battle and go back in macro. And the Thors just one-shot at all my Stalkers, and I immediately lose. I mean, the Thor is incredible. Even against Hydralisks, one-shotting Hydralisks, I do love them quite a bit. And you know what? I am going to unmute the chat, and I'm going to end this stream, because we've been going for exactly 1 hour. So, big thanks to everyone who showed up to the stream today. Please tune into Day 9 Daily number 100, and once again, thank you so much for all your donations to help make the streaming quality much better. I'm going to cover up the webcam, which is going to be a little bit bright because there's actually a light here. And yep, I will see you tomorrow, 7 p.m. Pacific. Please tune into Day 9 Daily number 100 to hear my story of how StarCraft influenced my life. See you later. Look, I know you can see my hand, and I know the autofocus is annoying, but I installed it 1 second before this cast. I gotta figure out a way to turn out that light. You know, I was gonna go, but I'm trying to figure out how to cover up this webcam, because before I used to be able to just put my palm on the front. I used to be able to just, but of course I just bought it and it's expensive. You know, I don't actually own expensive things. I don't own a phone. I don't own a car. I own nothing, right? I am a very poor person, and I like that state where I just don't have anything, because this means that the only resource I can give is info, and I just want to vomit it out at you guys. But now I actually own, look, I'm looking straight at the webcam. I'm not even talking to the screen. I'm just looking at you, Mr. Webcam. How do I cover you up? Because look, I have this Gatorade cap, and I can cover it up with the Gatorade cap, but then it's this weird orange color. This is so... What is this, man? I'm going to have to figure this out. How do I turn you off? You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and cover it up. I'm going to finish my ranting. That's a Gatorade cap, and I am out.